In conversation with some fascinating ladies who've changed the game in the world of video, music, and gaming. Only on Hungama Game Changers Leadership Series podcast.
Welcome to the Hungama Game Changers Leadership Series, a space where we spotlight women shaping the future of entertainment across gaming, music, and video. Today's guest has spent her career at the intersection of technology, creativity, and scale. As the Vice President of Global Apps and Games Partnerships at Google Play, Purnima Kochikar is helping define how billions of women discover, create, and experience digital content. Her leadership has been driven by and has driven some of the biggest shifts in how emerging markets, especially India, are shaping global entertainment from gaming and apps to story and innovation. Purnima, it is such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Raunaq. Always good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm going to start really by diving in and saying you've led some of the world's biggest technology organizations. You've been at Nokia, you've been at Google, each with its own culture, complexity. I'm going to start by saying tell us a little bit about the journey, but also what does it take for women to rise to this level of senior leadership in environments that have been historically a little bit more male-dominated?
Yeah, I mean, well, first kudos to you. You're setting up, a very important role model for everyone. So I'm sure your stories and mine will reflect quite a bit. And I'm sure you can recognize this. I feel a lot of it is in our mind. And sometimes it starts with where it all began. I feel I won the birth lottery. And in that is that I was brought up in a gender-neutral home. My granddad was a Gandhian. He fought for independence. And he truly embraced the thing that competent people did things. So I grew up seeing my aunts climb up and fix fuses or climb the tree to get something down. My dad sew buttons. And I thought competent people did things. I didn't realize that women did some things and men did some things.
That's a lovely treasure and privilege to have grown up with.
100%. That's why I feel like in some ways you're already conditioned not to think in certain ways.
Yeah.
And my dad is a retired professor, and he's a soil mechanics expert. So he would be looking at figuring out the structural validity of bridges. And one of the first toys he brought me when he went for one of his conferences is a mechano set.
Oh.
You see, I didn't grow up very traditionally, like having a doll and thinking that I have to have a certain role. And you recognize this, in India, being a geek is celebrated.
Yes.
Right? So all of those, I think, led to a notion that if you knew things, you would do things. So that is important. I'm not taking away from the fact that it was still complex, but it gave me a very good foundation to get started, because I didn't view myself as I'm in a foreign place. When I was around men, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be here.
Right.
Because I didn't see men and women being in different places. So maybe that's the starting point.
Okay. Building on that,
Yes.
Culture is a word that today we use very easily.
Yes.
So I will ask you, since you have been at the helm of, large organizations, how does one build culture that helps women thrive and not just survive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First and foremost, I think, do the right thing in choosing a place where the culture sort of gels with you. That's first. So I worked in the US for predominantly three big companies. I worked for some smaller ones, and I can talk about that as well. Bell Atlantic, which was a telecom company.
Yeah.
Nokia, which was a device manufacturer, and now I'm at Google. And the one thing that connected all of these companies was a very strong sense of service, of wanting to do something much bigger than themselves in the service of people. So that gelled.
Right.
That doesn't mean each one interpreted it the same way.
Yeah.
right? So Bell Atlantic truly believed in it in the salt of the earth kind of way. So here I was, fresh off the boat, immigrant, just gotten out of school, and I get a job to build a field force automation system to figure out how to track all the trucks that were going around
Right.
to fix
Right.
things, right? With unionized guys. And I'm naive thinking I'm building software and the
Yeah.
guys don't want to be tracked.
Right.
So, lesson number one, I learned that I needed to dress down.
Right.
I needed to talk to them. I also needed to tell them we are both doing our jobs
Yeah.
after walking in and really falling on my face. Right. Because it was first I went in to pitch my software, realizing, oh, that's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So understanding your audience, I think, is important. So I
Yeah,
told them,
correct. I was
listen,
just going to say communicating at not your level, at the level of whoever it is that you're speaking to, up, down, whatever.
spot on. 100%, right? So then I had to tell them, listen, I'm a first generation immigrant. I'm fresh off the boat here. I have to wait for my papers. I'm doing a job. You're doing a job. Let's figure it out. And that changed things. Then they started telling me about their kids and how long they've been working and the pride of the company and why we should do.
Right.
And we could both agree that we wanted to make sure that the customer service doesn't get interrupted. So what we're both trying to do is make it easier for us to make sure when a person picks up the phone, I date myself, that there is a dial tone, right? So that was that.
So that would be in the field. What about in the office? How did you also then sort of make yourself heard in that room?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate to have had good managers. So my manager at Bell Atlantic was wonderful, still consider him as a mentor and everything else. And so I think, there is large cultures and telco is very entrenched, is very male. But I also feel, and this is something maybe to tell all the women, you play a very important role in companies because your employees come to work because of you, no matter which level you are, because you're the first point of contact. And I think remembering that allows you to put concentric circles, right? So
Right.
Bob, who was my manager at the time, he shielded in some of it because he was very nerdy and very clever and very smart. And we were writing software. So we were in a little bubble on our own, shielded from telco.
Purnima, actually, I'm going to ask you to tell the story that led to the phrase "be Bob" to someone.
Yes. This is, this is the different story. So I'll come to that in a second.
Yes.
Right? So post Bell Atlantic, I went to business school. After business school, I went to a startup. And in the startup, there is, I had, I was managing business development and product marketing, which means it was me,
Right.
right? And then there was a guy who was
Managing that yourself.
correct. And then there was,
Yeah.
a post business school, you feel you need a big title, and this guy he was managing product, and it was great with a bunch of young people working, and we had done everything from setting up IKEA furniture to cleaning up the rooms and I felt like I was right in the middle of the heart of Silicon Valley, and we were in this culture kind of thing, right? And then the product was getting ready. We were building a big telco switch. It was meant to be sold to a big telecom company. And we hired a senior guy who had led sales in large telcos. And I remember clearly one day that the two of us, and this time it's Mike and me standing next to each other.
Mike, not Bob,
Yes.
correct.
And
Yeah.
I always say that every time I do this, I should give him a penny. He would be very rich. And this person, who we'll call Jerry, walked across, and cross Mike came to me and showed me a paper, and you said, can you make 25 copies? And the person in me who thought, oh, freshly minted MBA, I've come to the United States by myself. I'm all like, the ultimate feminist who knows what to do, what you need, realized I had no skills, zero. And, the Indian in you is taught to respect elders.
Right.
And be respectful at least. But the little voice in my head was like, don't do it. But I didn't know how to respond. And Mike stepped in and turned around and said, oh, Jerry, you haven't seen where the copy machine is. Let me walk you to it. And that's why I've always said, have somebody have your back.
Yeah.
And I always say you
And
need mics
I
in your
remember
life.
you telling the story once before, and I remember thinking, what a great ally to have in the room.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the other thing. Besides managers, I've always had really good, I mean, as I said, I owe it to I always say, have wonderful girlfriends. I've always had like a small group of women who I can totally trust, but also have amazing men in your life who are enabling these things, right? I mean, I told about my granddad's legacy, my dad's mechano toys. I wouldn't be able to do without having a very supportive partner who I'm, married to, and have people like Mike in my life. So I think it is both, and that may be the second thing I tell women very much. The first one is that remember that you can create your world,
Right.
and the second, more importantly, is always make sure you build a personal board of advisors, and a personal board of advisors that is ruthlessly honest with you,
Yeah.
but has your back when you can. Your blocking and tackling team. So you need the
Yeah.
mics who can step in, but also somebody who can tell you when you're like, nope, that's not cutting it.
Yeah.
Go fix it. And that was the, other thing that happened. In India, we obviously, I mean, we learn English, we get to know, but when I get excited, I can speak very fast and I can trip over myself. And Bob, my other manager that I was talking to about, told me that, you have great ideas, but you're hard to be understood. And so that's the other thing, personal responsibility, but at the same time demanding what you need out of the system.
Right.
So I found out that Bell Atlantic had Toastmasters. So I actually went and participated in the Toastmasters thing to be
Right.
able to learn how to speak, even though, I went to a Catholic school and I learned in English and I thought I was reasonably articulate, right? And that's the other thing I tell women all the time. Invest in being a better communicator.
Yeah.
Your voice matters. How you communicate matters. Yeah,
Do
in
you
things.
think do you think it's more important how a woman communicates as opposed to a man? Because I do find that um, while we're slowly weaning out of she's aggressive, he's assertive kind of stereotypes, I do find that it's a lot easier for an assertive woman to be categorized as other adjectives: greedy, ambitious, um, slightly selfish, um, some of the other slang that goes with the rest of it. So, do you think that's a gendered reality?
So I think there is two sides to it. One side, I tell people, some of it, embrace it.
Yeah.
Ambitious, I can embrace. Right. So there's okay to take some and say, okay, fine, it's my badge. Others of it challenge. And what I mean by that is there's a couple of things. I'll talk about the two extremes in communication. So let's start on the one extreme and then we'll get to the other one that you're talking about. The one extreme that we found, Herminia Ibarra was a power and influence professor at business school at Harvard, and she taught this class. And she showed how women tend to use passive tense more and tend to say things like, I think, I like, to be able to make your way. And I think some of it is because of what you have said. The times when they have been very direct, I think they saw backlash. So now they try to ease themselves in. And one of the things Herminia would say is that, do you think or do you know?
Yeah.
Do you believe or do you know? State it, right? And the other thing she said is that there is something interesting apparently that happens in pure communication if you start a sentence with I, because it becomes about you versus the issue. And she
Right.
told us to start with email to first take off all I sentences. And that's
I
an
think that's a
interesting,
great tip.
it's an excellent tip. And so instead of saying, I think this should be done, you should say, per this project, or this project needs this. Now you're taking yourself out.
Yeah.
So the gender component goes out. And you're making everybody who's reading
Completely
it focus
objective.
on the topic, the object of it. And that also takes away women's need to get liked or not get pushed back on. And so I did a lot of rewriting emails. I still say a lot of I think, because my team reminds me. I tell them to keep account, right? So they still tell me. So some of it is work in progress, right? But at least I reread my emails. I take off I sentences. And when I write something really important, I make sure I do that. And if I'm preparing for something important, then I write it out and I say, what did I say? And can I take those things out? And so I think that was a really important tip. I also remind myself if I'm doing in passive sentences, and I think Indian languages translate more in passive.
Yeah.
I'm not a linguist, so I can't give you an example. But I think how we talk about, I think again, how we talk in English, in Indian languages, because there's a lot of saying, we would say, like, ye karo, it becomes much more like a parental thing.
Yes.
Hum ye kar sakte, like, I think there's a lot of that in family thing, and that translates in people's heads much more as passive. And so, I've become more aware of it. Something is very entrenched. Then coming to your other end of it, the other end of it, I've realized is that you have to, back to my previous comment, you have to build a coalition of like-minded people. And that coalition can be women's coalitions or it can be cross-gender coalitions. So let's talk about the example. President Obama, ignore the politics, had a very diverse cabinet with some amazingly strong women. But turns out that he had stronger men. I don't know what the scale is.
Mm-hmm.
And he could hear the men.
Mm-hmm.
This is super interesting. I should also talk to you about a study that the business school did. And so he would, one of the women in his cabinet would say X, and then a few minutes later, the man in the cabinet would say Y, same thing, let's repeat X, and he would focus on the man and say, yeah, that's a great idea. So the women got together and said, we will amplify each other. So in a meeting, they kept saying, and as Raunaq said, and as like, I don't know, Maggie said, whatever else, right? So, and President Obama is a very, I suppose, perceptive person.
Right.
And after some time, he's like, am I missing something? I see all of you calling each other's names. And then they gave him examples. And they realized that the men were not doing it maliciously.
Right.
But because everybody is thinking and they're coming at it, but somehow turns out that we hear what we want to hear. There is some
I think
intrinsic...
we hear what we want to hear. I also think that women tend to wait their turn and tend not to talk over somebody who's making a point. We're willing to listen to you and we think we will get our turn.
And 100%. So this is the other interesting anecdote. When Nitin Noria became the dean of the Harvard Business School, and he said, turns out that at the just before graduation ceremony, the faculty gets together and they sit down, and then they have a conversation. They vet the graduating class, and at business school, there is this thing called Baker Scholar, which is top 5%, and there's honor roll, which is top 10%, and so on and so forth. And then they say, presenting the Baker Scholar group. And they're like, yes, we agree that nobody has any concerns whether these people can be, and so on and so forth. So there's some process. And there was a junior faculty member who had recently joined, and she raised her voice and said, there's lots of these names are from different nationalities. So I don't know how many are male or female. How many of the Baker Scholars are male or female? And they found that there was 5% in a class which is 35% women.
Right.
And so she said, have you considered why? Because when we admit people, we admit at the same level of competitiveness.
Yes.
So is our system doing something off, right? And so Nitin Noria says there were immediately the stereotypes got formed, right? That chances are we're lowering the bar for women. He said, okay, good hypothesis. Let's go check it out. And then somebody said, oh, most of the men, like professors are men, and chances are they want, or maybe women wait their turn, all of these things. So he took those hypotheses. Like, for example, when people say we lower the bar for women, they took a bunch of the applicants who had just been admitted, blacked out all their names, and asked people whether they would rate them differently. Nope. So that means the bar was the same.
Right.
Right. When they looked at the women professors and male professors, turned out women students performed the same way in male professor classes as well as women professor classes. So isn't that like male professors suddenly had a vendetta against women? So they were scratching their head. And at Harvard, 50% of your class participation, your grade 50% is class participation.
Right.
And the professors remember and they write it out. And so your insight is very astute. That's why I wanted to tell you the story. So Nitin just decided that he's going to just have a person like a scribe type it out. John said this, Jane said this, everything, right? And the professors remember and they mark this thing, and they're trained to go back and rate people as to who said which comment and how much they can give. When they looked at the transcript, they were surprised. And they found that they had not heard the women. So then the question was why? And now comes your insight. Not only were the women waiting the turn, but when they did say something, they amplified the guys.
Right. Yeah, they're willing to kind of also give that, I like this, I agree with this, and then I'll take that forward.
The collaborative thing.
Yes.
And they amplified the guys. So the guy's name was heard multiple times.
Right. And so it became as good as him having that conversation as well.
Correct. And just by resetting, saying that this woman actually made this comment, they changed the ratios of honor rolls at Harvard.
That's a great story, and it's a great story with a good ending.
Yes, and it also says whether we are hearing. So what I tell people in the room, amplify each other. There's enough space for everybody, right? And if somebody does, which is the other thing Professor Herminia Ibarra said, call it out. She would do it in class. Isn't that something that Raunaq just said? Do you have something new to say?
Yeah.
So if you are a leader, call it out.
I read somewhere that there is nobody who is more aware of what was or has a better understanding of what was said than a woman in a meeting who will say, sorry, I'm just going to repeat this so I understand it better.
I love that.
Yeah, because it's true. When somebody says that, you're basically trying to say, I'm going to repeat these words so you hear them.
Yes.
I'm also going to say that, in a lot of meandering, the point you're still trying to make is exactly this, correct? Which may or may not be sort of to the sort of end or the greater good. I'm going to sort of move this a little bit to what you've been doing, whether it's with the Upscale Academy. I know that tier 2, tier 3 activation and inclusion in those markets has been something that you've sort of been vocal about also in the past. As you're driving those initiatives, I'd love to hear any of the stories that you have coming out of those. But I also would love to see what are the kind of sort of innovators or startups that women are actually emerging with from these regions that are more Bharat, say, than just because there's so much of it now happening in those markets.
Yeah. So it's been a matter of pride for me, as they say, my heartstrings are still tied to India. I've been out for a long time. Many things. One, that innovation is happening in the secondary and tertiary cities. Whenever we do any kind of apps or games accelerators, we find startups and founders and founding teams coming from secondary tertiary cities, which is awesome. That means innovation isn't only in the tier one
Yeah.
cities. Number two, more than 30% of the applicants had a woman in the founding team. So this is happening in secondary tertiary cities. And the kinds of things that are being founded depends on whether it is a mixed team or whether it is like women-led team, not necessarily for one way or the other. They're doing everything from games to productivity to other aspects, but they're taking a real view of what is needed locally.
Right.
They're looking at things, there are people who are thinking about how to improve learning. There are people who are thinking about how to get women to start businesses. There are people who are thinking about everything from beauty to fashion. I mean, the world is their oyster. But what is interesting, I think, is that, when the world is 50% male, female, you need people who are building for the audience that you're going to sell, right? It's as simple as that. So we see the spectrum. We are inspired by the audacity of their ambition, and I'm truly, bullish about the young people in India today.
Okay, I actually would love to sort of have this opportunity to say what are the support systems that are already in place? Because the reality is, if you're doing something in digital, if you are sort of going to build out an app experience for your product, the chances are the Play Store is going to be your largest rollout and distribution sort of plan. What are the support systems that you do have, say, for women founded apps, or apps that have women that are largely developing it or are solving for women?
Yeah, so the when we build for people and the kinds of things we do for training, we are sort of gender blind. But when we promote, we do have places where we do. Like we promote based on how we think will resonate with the user. So, for example, we have a Made in India clusters that we
Right.
do because we know that the Indian audience does want to support the Indian ecosystem, which is fantastic. I love the pride that is there. Globally, Women's History Month comes in.
Right.
Globally, there are times when people think about everything from mental health to women's reproductive health, etc. And there are always collections that are built to support, women, and a lot of those are built by women,
Right.
for women audiences for different stages and phases in life. But then there are also just women who are just building amazing things for the general audience, right? I mean, your case in point. I mean, like, Hungama isn't just for women, and
No.
you are a strong leader, right?
No, but I
So
also think like Nykaa is a great example. We were buying, there were
fantastic,
cosmetics were available online before.
100%.
But I do think that Nykaa was able to bring in an editorial context that
Yes,
related to women. In
absolutely,
some way, she captured the imagination like the
absolutely.
generalists were just not able to do before.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also for the Indian skin tone with the
Yes.
Indian fabrics when you're wearing and all of those things. Which is, I suppose, the other thing, know your audience so then you can figure out how to get to them in the right way.
Okay.
Right?
Now, if we're, in terms of building a stronger entertainment ecosystem, which is
Yeah.
really the space that we try and amplify here, across the creative and tech ecosystems, we often see women a little bit more in the space as a creator, as opposed to a founder or an investor or an investable founder. How do you think we can try and get to close the gap, both from a system or a systemic solution point of view, but also from the point of view of that, woman founder who's looking to become investable?
Well, I'm actually, yes. And I'm finding that I think there are more people realizing there are audiences and things to be told. Like, for example, if you take like the Reese Witherspoon uh, aspect, like both from, becoming from a book club perspective, you know,
Absolutely,
to
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 production.
becoming
Yeah,
a production house that then takes the books that women have told, the stories that need to be told, to getting, because there are a lot of women protagonists, which means that you give people the opportunity, all the way to I think now authoring her own book. It's an interesting example, I think,
yeah,
which people can look at and embrace, and we've had strong women, producers, etc., in India as well. The issue, I feel, a lot of times is, are you building a strong enough network for people to make a bet? Because media traditionally, and we can talk about what some of the trends that are happening in media today, because people are testing things out and figuring out
right,
concepts and using social networks to do. Media has been hit base. Hit base is high beta.
right.
And so somebody has to make a bet to say, I trust your gut
Yeah,
for the first time, right? Then your track record, it doesn't mean every time it'll be a hit, but the once people know and they know that you have that thing. And that, I think, in media related things versus uh, you know uh, e-commerce or something, where you can just say, this is my inventory, this I can show the numbers, I know where it's going,
yeah,
uh, requires more of a bet on the individual founder, more of a bet in things. It also, and this, you should know better than I do, because I haven't really gone deep in, but I have found in general, having hired a lot of amazing women on the team, they are much better at negotiating what they think is within the rules than outside the rules.
yes,
And what I mean by that is, they will figure out, oh, I should know that I should get a bonus and I should get equities, a certain thing. But I've got wonderful guys on my team, but they will do the homework. They are much more willing to ask somebody how much you make. They are much more willing to ask for stuff like, to say, can I get 3 more months in corporate housing? Can you ship my dog? Whatever it is,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
by the end of it, the packages, because if I take that lens, I find that women more comfortable in knowing, I can do this within
yeah,
this. And a media, I think, requires you to go outside that box
right.
and make somebody believe that you can do it. So that might be a question to say, do you tell the story to make somebody believe? How do you find the first person to believe? But I'm excited about women investing in women and
I think
figuring
women
this.
investing in women has been an interesting trend over the last few years,
Yes.
because I think they're the ones who are like, I'm interested in doing this. I'm also interested in making sure that, when I invest in money, I'm not going to have somebody sort of try and over explain things to me as we go down the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah. But the other thing, when you said that, it reminded me, I have a lot of guy friends who are founders. They have much higher comfort in asking friends and family,
Yes.
because they are like, they have an option to invest. And if they say no, I don't feel hurt. And if they say yes, they know that there is risk.
Oh, I think for women in when they're still bootstrapping, um, they are extremely conscious because they know exactly how the budget goes down at the end of the month. So they realize that not working for a job, bringing in a salary, these are the things that me and my family will sort of, push forward a year, no holiday, whatever. They're also very conscious of. So I do feel that, in fact, somebody asked me this in a panel, and I said it is extremely difficult to get over. We're debt averse, as
Yes.
women tend to be, which may not necessarily be the best thing. It just makes us a lot more because its growth is slow. I also think that we have a great sense of responsibility Which means that asking your parents or your in-laws or, a sister, it's a very big obligation.
Yes.
Um, Whereas guys do tend to think that it's a bit of a extension of the privilege of being a child or a sibling or a
Or that they're
spouse.
actually bringing an opportunity.
Yeah.
I think women think, oh my God, I'm asking for a favor. And the guy walks in thinking he's giving you an opportunity to
I'm giving
invest.
you the opportunity to get in on the ground floor.
Yes. And that could also, and I know you obviously mentor a lot of folks, etc. I don't know whether that gives subliminal signals to investors in how we present, back to Herminia's thing about passive voice and not using I sentences, etc. Because if you're walking in and saying, I'm giving you an opportunity, versus you're walking in with a mindset to say, I'm asking you for a favor, even the
I also
nearest
think
people.
there's a little bit of that. You do have young founders
Yes.
today, and the reality is that nobody is asking a 28-year-old founder called Sanjay what his marriage and having baby
Oh,
plans are.
100%. 100%.
And the shocking reality is that it's a question a lot of people are still very
100%.
comfortable asking.
100%.
And the thing is that, I keep trying to look at it from both sides because, you're trying to do this, and I'm thinking, either you think all spouses are schmucky and will not bear half the burden and will not be worried when a child has fever, or we're just, or you think that it's okay to have these very
Yeah.
personal questions that she may not have yet had with her spouse or
Yeah.
partner or whoever.
Yeah.
But you want to know when she's going to have a baby before they've decided when they're going to have a baby.
Yeah. No, people do ask that. And at least in the US, I think it's been viewed as non-PC, but it comes up all the time. I have women, friends who are founders, and these questions have come up. And it has been cast as it's a risk because we're
It's
making
a
a bet
risk.
on you. And yes, and that's also one of those difficult things because you asked me way up in the conversation, like, what does it take? And uh, at the time when you're totally hitting your stride is also the time when you're totally ready for a baby. Those timing, those clocks really intersect.
Yeah.
And that makes it.
Um, yeah, and I think it's really hard because I think more and more women feel the pressure to choose. And I had this interesting conversation with my 20-year-old a few months back, and I was saying something about, oh, you're doing an internship. We need to get you office appropriate wear, and it must be this and it must be that. And she looked at me and she said, I'll buy everything that you want. But can I just say one thing? I said, yes. She said, you felt that it worked against you to be feminine in your dressing when you were going to the office. She said, I don't feel that. I feel like I can be feminine and still be effective, and I don't want to change that about myself. And when she said it, I was about to start arguing with her. And then I became really quiet because I realized it's shifted. I
Yes.
did feel like I needed to underplay anything feminine.
Yes.
I needed to be as good as a man.
Yes.
Not I needed to be great with all of my skill sets, including
Yes.
the skill set that I have inherently because I'm a woman.
Yes. Well, you do have a wonderful, precocious daughter, so that's always a good thing. And
She just
I am very very excited for that generation to redefine the rules. And
so you're sort of at the forefront, seeing the trends emerge before, I suspect, even some of the sort of founders and movers and shakers in gaming, in music and media, and just consumption overall. uh, Sort of you're seeing how the digital content landscape is evolving, not just from early days, but even on an ongoing basis. So, what are the major shifts that you're seeing now in maybe in a, keeping AI in mind, keeping just consumption trends, post-COVID, digital fatigue, all of that in mind, what are the big trends that you're already seeing that you think will kind of settle in terms of how people are using digital, the apps from an entertainment point of view?
Yeah, great question. I think we are past the COVID peak and the post-COVID slump,
Okay.
right? Because I think post-COVID, they said there was revenge travel, whatever that
Yeah.
meant, right? Everybody's like, I'm done with the screens. I'm going to go out. And I think, all the pendulums have now, like, I think, getting to some amount of equilibrium.
Coming back to normal, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good thing because, when you're running businesses, you want to not be swayed by this big sways. That being said, there is a very interesting dichotomy of two ends, and on the one end, there are people who are saying, "Make it shorter for me." On the other end, they're saying, "Make it more immersive."
Yeah.
Because on one end, we are seeing XR, what we call it, right? People
Yeah.
are like, I walk through things, make it 3D, make it all of this stuff. And of course, there is this notion where the real world and the physical world come together. What they call it
Yeah.
AI. The next frontier is that the seams between digital and physical go away. And
Yeah, I think a little bit on that. I think hardware still needs to play catch up a little bit.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But this notion that we could eventually get to a form factor that looks like a stylish pair of glasses,
Right.
and that you could walk through the world and be able to experience things, opens up all kinds of interesting things.
Yeah.
Right? We did this, to your point, with less than ideal hardware, but we were walking through Hollywood, and we could say, okay, what about the 50s? And you
Yeah.
could walk through 50s Hollywood and so on and so forth. And it is like magical. You can walk through history at any given road and know what's happening and all of those things. And so I think that could lead to other kinds of, interactive aspects, and interactive aspects become gaming. And you guys know more than anyone
Yes,
else
of
that,
course.
the seams are very blending between gaming and entertainment, or the what you call passive consumption versus interactivity. So one hand, it's going super immersive and all kinds of interesting things. And on the other hand, it's make it even more shorter. So short dramas, as you may have seen, is like a very big trend. And what was interesting about short drama is that it flipped the playbook on storytelling.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. For me, always I'm like, okay, where does the human behavior flip? And so one of the founders was explaining to me that, his first 5 short dramas failed. And then he had to sit down and he had to ask himself why. And then he realized that if you're going for a movie, and he said 90 minutes, but if it's an Indian movie, maybe like 3 hours, whatever, right? We're committed. And so the first minute can be the person walked on the beach or looked at a sunset or walked with somebody, and we're like, okay. And we wait for the drama to unfold until the end. We are happy, sad, disappointed, whatever. But we have committed to that time.
Right.
But if it's short drama, in the first minute, you need to know whether you're hooked or not. So what does he do? He tells the end.
Oh, nice.
Right. And the rest of it, you tell how you get to the end.
Right.
Now it gets crazy. From, games, you do version 2, version 3.
Yes.
Now he's taking the same ending and making multiple versions.
Yeah.
Because people send in to say, I didn't like how it came to it. I have a different way. So the plots come together. So then you're co-creating. Interesting thing. Now, of course, they're very pulpy and they're, low production value. But
also, so many of these books, I mean, some of them are going to feature length coming out of apps like Wattpad.
Yes, but that will change, as we know, right? Because innovation and technology will just help things get better. But knowing how humans interact is interesting. So he said that, and I thought to myself, that's kind of interesting. Then it dawned on me that we've done the same thing for cooking.
Yes.
Right? We used to write books. And then, we would people would say, here's, you like Italian cooking. This is my favorite book. And we would give each other cookbooks and we would open it to read through things to even understand what we have to do. And when the web came along, we emulated the cookbook. we showed ingredients and we went all the way. And fast forward to Instagram and TikTok, they show you the end result of the thing. Here's the cake. And then in 30 seconds, they're telling you how to make it backwards. And I was like, oh, so the whole world wants ending first. Like, I don't like the ending of my book. Like, I want to read the thing, and I'm like, no spoilers. And so that's interesting for me. And I'm like, what does that mean? Right? So that's an interesting thing I've been chewing on. Then I heard this crazy stat from another short drama founder. He found that people are watching his short drama episode on 2x speed. I'm like, I give up. You know,
Actually, in a conversation with Neeraj, I remember Indian actor Ajay Devgan telling the story about how he walked out and watched his daughter watch a whole film in 2x speed. And he, as a filmmaker himself, he looked at her and he said, "You can't do that to somebody. Somebody's acted in that film." And she was like, "But you have to do it, now you have to tell the story that much faster." So he says, so I went back and I stopped all work that I was doing to relook at how I was telling these stories, because they are just going to otherwise watch every other expression.
Yes. Yes. And so that aspect, I'm trying to figure out, what does that mean? Because on the one hand, it is amazing that because being concise and precise is a great art of communication, right? Saying it in less words. And the fact that this recipe book, which took a couple of years to come out or whatever, to a YouTube video might have taken minutes, and now in less than a minute you're showing pretty complicated recipes and you're grokking it and you can make it. So because short drama, you can say, okay, you're just watching, but you're actually teaching people to do things backwards. And
well, I think also, the thing about the 2x, and this is just me sort of bouncing off what you said, you can speed up your edit, but your dialogues are going to go at the speed that your dialogues are going to go. And we tend to speak like, when you're speaking, the first rule is hurry up slowly. So I think perhaps it's just that. At least for our generation, we're very conscious of the fact that we shouldn't go too fast, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, I was told to slow down.
Yeah.
And now everybody's watching in 2x speed. So I don't know what to do about it, right? Maybe I should. Yeah. And there's also the aspect about I watch people make an Instagram reel or whatever else, or a YouTube short, and then you're asking, they spend so much time in perfecting the edit. And that's the other interesting thing, I think, because I've always believed constraint creates creativity, right?
Yeah.
We see that we make small engineering teams, like our Notebook LM product, which we're very proud of, and if people haven't tried, they should, and so on. It was 7 people.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe I should talk about that too as an interesting exercise in creating interesting media format in a second, which also intersects with AI. And because there were 7 people, they had to figure out really quickly how to. And I'm sure you see that all the time in your company. Take a small group of people and they can create magical things, right? And so in some ways, what would happen if we tell all of us that all of this has to happen in like less time? Like what choices would we make, right?
Yeah, so and I'm sure everybody will have a slightly different version. Exactly. That's 2-3 seconds you're shaving off with each idea.
Exactly. So Notebook LM, which is our AI tool, which you can put lots of content in, it creates a notebook. The notion is that notebooks were how we kept notes about complicated things. And the notebook also gave us answers. So that's the mental model. And that you can put tons of documents and it creates a notebook for you, which is queryable, but also creates a little very short, less than 7-minute podcast that you can listen to. So you can put gobs of documents and you can get it distilled, and then you can get a notebook that you can ask more questions. Awesome. So what was interesting? When the first they did, they said, oh, okay, the tech is there, let's make it. And turns out that the first podcast was really boring. Right? So then they're like, okay, what does it mean? So they went and looked at what humans are doing. So it turns out in a podcast, there is somebody who reads or presents. And
Right.
then there is somebody who writes a script. And there's somebody who's a coach who will coach the intonations and everything else. So we actually wrote AI tools for all of it. So now AI writes a script and then AI coaches a script. And AI, which is like for me, it's like a mind-blowing thing that this happened. But then fast forward, they were like, hey, guess what? We're supporting Hindi. I was like, okay. And then I listened to it and I'm like, Indians don't speak like this. Because because in English, people say, really? And so, but in Hindi, you can't literally translate that.
Sahi. Right.
Exactly. People will say, ha. You will say. And so I just asked my India team to send a bunch of what they thought was a spectrum of audio things, right?
Correct.
Everything from like a very hip young person podcast to a very serious news podcast, whatever.
Right.
And the machine learned because it understood the intonations
Yeah.
and everything else. And so that for me is the other interesting thing, is to say we have been limited by what we have understood in media.
Yeah.
And with AI, I think that limitation goes away. So think about it. I was talking to Reddit, and they were talking about how today there are different subreddits, and they are divided by language and unified by interest. But if you have real-time translation, the world of bird feeders could come together, the world of bird watchers, or the world of woodworkers, or the world of political junkies, or whatever. Right? Today they're like, oh, I post in Spanish, so I can only talk to people who know Spanish. Yes, they can do translate, but it's not real time. So if we could all set our languages to whatever we want, I think there'll be a different world that you can
Well, I
figure
think
out.
what AI is being able to do for language is probably one of the most significant changes coming out of the new generation of technology, because we are finally able to have conversations that are in real time, in in a context and a language that is of greatest comfort to us. My primary language of speaking is English. I think in English largely. And yet, sometimes when I need to communicate emotion, I have to go vernacular, whether it's Hindi or Punjab. I do, because I feel like sometimes, and especially with my really close friends,
100%.
even when we were youngsters, we were not speaking as much Hindi, I feel, as we do today, because sometimes you need to be able to kind of
Yes.
communicate at a granular level.
100%. And that is a word that there's no translation for the word, right?
Yeah.
And in my case, my mother's mother tongue is Konkani, which
Yes.
doesn't have a script.
Yes.
So I have lots of books written in Konkani that I can't read,
Okay.
right? Because some people write in Marathi script and some people write in
Right.
Devanagari and some people write in Malayalam. All around the Konkan coast, people
Yeah.
write with different things. So now all of a sudden you can make Konkani readable for everybody.
Yeah. In the
Even though,
Konkani
yes,
language, but in a script that they understand.
yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's interesting.
Okay. I'm aware of the fact that
Yes,
we're sort of inching up to the hour. I just have a quick question. We've talked
yes,
a fair amount about what AI is doing in terms of rewriting how we create, and even how we consume. I have also the flip side, because I've also heard the rumblings on a couple of forums, Reddit boards, things like that, about a global growing concern that AI could in fact exacerbate some of these inequalities, leading to, because it will at some point, or to begin with, lead to redundancies which may disproportionately affect women. Is that something that you think is just a lot of saber rattling, a lot of sort of, um, you know, uh, people sort of being more concerned about that? Because as redundancies occur, you will have, at some point, a, a loss of jobs that are like you're seeing currently, that are slightly more disproportionate. In that situation, do you believe the percentages of women in the workforce will go down?
I don't know. And I'll tell you why. My mental model for AI or any tech shifts is the following. At a particular price, at a particular price point, demand is infinite, and I'll tell you what that means. Shifts will happen, and as long as shifts are positive, I think it depends on what the shift needs to be. And then lastly, the aspect is to really think about what couldn't we do and what's the new thing. So let's give you an example. Way back when, when people needed to fly, it was very expensive and they needed travel agents, and paper tickets came home and people are really worried and said, can you keep this safe? Like everybody wanted to know where the ticket
Yes.
is, right? And now everybody does a couple clicks and tickets are there and they come on your phone and you don't even have like a paper thing. And travel agents, unless you're doing some really sophisticated or unique African safari or something, are pretty much, you don't need them.
Right.
However, the number of flights have increased. Number of pilots have increased.
Right.
The number of in-cabin people have increased dramatically. The number of hotels have increased.
Hotels, Airbnb.
Because people
Yes,
are traveling
absolutely.
more.
Hospitality.
The hospitality industry has increased, right? And then you fast forward, you would never have thought about Uber or an Airbnb or any of those if you didn't have the connectivity. So what does it mean on the AI side for these kinds of things, right? What would be the shifts happen and where do you do? So in some ways, I think there is an opportunity for things to truly become an equalizer. I mean, coming from India, the wealthy can afford to have tutors and everyone else.
Right.
And the not so will try to send them to some, suboptimal, and the ones who don't. And AI can tutor. And so I think it changes access. It changes things to figure out. So at a particular price point, I think, all of us would love to have a staff of all kinds of things that the billionaires do. And there's no reason why we can't, why every person can't with AI. And I think that is one mental model. The second thing is in terms of things that we don't even know is possible and things, there's people are connecting doctors to each other who did not know that their fields are connected because they're trying to
Yes.
save the life of a loved one. And they're not even doctors. They're not even medical
like you would not typically have spoken to the orthopedic.
And because you can put lots of documents and you can say, okay, so a colleague of mine, his kid was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition. He was given 7 years. The kid is 2 years old. And he's an engineer. He just said, let me figure out what it is. He put all the documents for that particular disease. He found there was a genetic, a particular gene that comes up in a lot of the research. He put the gene's name and he found a whole lot of papers on Alzheimer's. Pediatrics to geriatrics, and these two departments never talk to each other.
Right.
So across the United States is bringing these people together. Just a dad trying to keep a kid for a few more years, right? So there are those. So, but what does it mean? Where I feel like there are positive things that are there, I think it takes away from some of the very hard. I mean, yes, there is always going to be people who will write language learning models and are going to be people who are extremely technical. But more and more, I think humans are going to talk like humans to machines versus encrypted code.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think women are good at conversing. So I think prompts make it easier for women. But that being said, back to what you said, we have to stop editing ourselves.
Yes.
And there again, AI is non-judgmental.
No, and it is
so
relatively gender agnostic, right?
Correct. But maybe you practice your negotiations. Maybe you learn from AI. Maybe you do these things. So I'm hopeful. I tend to be a tech optimist, so I'm hopeful.
Well, Purnima, I think we're at the end of the hour, and thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. One of the things I find most inspiring about you, knowing you and your journey, is that even though you've shown immense leadership at scale, you've shown that it does not come with losing empathy. It actually comes with expanding it. You've been really a bridge between technology and creativity, not just for people in creative industries like entertainment, but I think also people who are being creative in the solutions that they are trying to find. Between sort of a need and a platform, between Bharat and the world, between innovation and inclusion. And really, that's why I really wanted you to be a part of the leadership series at Hungama Changers. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for the conversation. And I'm a big fan. So thank you for the opportunity. Bye.
Bye. See you. Thanks for your time.
In conversation with some fascinating ladies who've changed the game in the world of video, music, and gaming. Only on Hungama Game Changers Leadership Series podcast.